How bad was the loss to Miami really? I'll take a look at that. Plus, Chris Paul in Boston. Can that happen? And I get a jump on your mailbag questions after the three-part collective bargaining agreement podcast. All right, now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Be ever ready. Recognize the city of champs. Boston, baby, we do what you can't. Locked on number 18, Tatum and Brown, J-team, step back. We gon' wet that and slay teams. Of course, the Celtics, who else could it be? Screaming like KG with the Larry O.B. Karalis above average, assessing the team status. Best daily pod, no cap salary matching. Clutch like Bird the DJ, Pete John on replay. Prime time, dapping up the truth on the sideline. Raining J's, how it started, raising banners, how we finished. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. B.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and I'm here for you every day with a free, fresh podcast drop directly to your device every Monday through Friday. So open up your favorite podcasting app, subscribe to the podcast, get it once I drop a new pod. Watch the show on YouTube, ring the bell there, get notified when a video drops. Get into the comments section, let us know what you think about the show, the Celtics, me, whatever. I want to thank you. I'm John Karalis. I cover the Celtics for Boston Sports Journal. I used to play once upon a time. I also wrote a book called The Boston Celtics All-Time All-Stars. People are ordering that for Father's Day on johnkaralis.com. All right, coming up today on the podcast. First of all, for those of you watching on YouTube, a little bit of a new setup, trying a new thing here. Bear with me as I get some of the buttons. I'm trying to do it all in one shot. It's like I'm my own producer in the background while I'm talking. Yeah, let's juggle a few balls in the air. So you can see over here on the that way. I'm trying to get used to it. What a jerk I am. Coming up later on, mailbag questions. People have asked a bunch of questions coming out of the collective bargaining agreement podcast. I'm going to start on a few of them in the third segment of today's podcast. Tomorrow, full mailbag. I'll do that as best I can, get through a lot of the questions. Second segment, Chris Paul in Boston. He's negotiating with Phoenix. He might be a free agent. He might be available to be moved. People are putting the photoshops of him out there. We'll get to, can he get to Boston at all? Is that possible? In our first segment, I'm just going to look at the Miami loss real quick because I'm doing this show after Game 3 of the NBA Finals where Miami lost, but a lot of the same stuff that they had been doing was working. And I don't know, it just I want to just take the full big picture on the loss to Miami in the conference finals. I'm not excusing anything away. That I'll just say that. Today's show is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. When you enter the promo code LockedOnNBA, they'll throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. So you get cool shorts, cool clothing, and you get a nice tumbler. So check that out. Okay, so I don't know. The thought popped into my head, and I'm not going to spend too long on this, but Miami, they are now down 2-1 to Denver, and I don't know how the rest of the series is going to go. They actually, part of the reason why they are down 2-1 is they came back down to earth with their three-point shooting. They shot 31.5%. The thought popped into my head about Miami's beaten Milwaukee. They beat Boston. They're hanging in tough with Denver. And no matter what, they just kept on defying expectations. I don't know what's going to happen in Game 4. Game 4 could be a Miami blowout. Could be who knows what. If Christian Brown didn't go off in this game and shock Miami with his own like random guy outlier performance, who knows how this game would have gone. But here we are. Let me just start by saying this. Boston's flaws are obvious. Their defense was not great. They kept making mistakes. They got caught in traps that Miami was setting for them. All of the things that we have been saying about the Celtics this postseason. None of that is excused away. However, if all of these teams keep making the same mistakes, if the Denver Nuggets get caught up in the same mistakes and they give up 3-pointers to, look, Caleb Martin shot 2 of 5 in game 3. They got 2 of 5 from Kevin Love. So a couple of guys hit shots. Duncan Robinson hit 3 of 6. If they got better shooting from Gabe Vincent, who was 1 of 6, and Max Strus, who was 1 of 4, maybe things would have been different. But they have been getting that shooting throughout the course of the playoffs. I was listening, or watching, I should say, Matt Moore kind of tweet his way through some stuff. And one of his tweets, it's Miami wasn't just creating better looks and shooting, just hitting wide open shots. It's not just that Miami is getting open shots and just knocking down the open shots. They're knocking down like all of the shots. And not only that, their opponents have been shooting horribly throughout the playoffs. So not only has Miami been shooting lights out, their opponents have been shooting, what would that be? Lights on? Is that the opposite? Regardless, the combination has been going on all playoffs long. I've compared it to the hot goalie in the NHL. This is the NBA's version of the hot goalie. And maybe we can say that despite Boston's flaws and all of the stuff that's legitimate, isn't it possible that we watched Miami have 4 of its best shooting performances of the playoffs, of any playoffs, against Boston's horrible shooting? Isn't it possible that maybe, despite their flaws, Boston got caught up in this avalanche of we're hitting nothing, they're hitting everything, and they still had a chance in a game 7? I don't know. I feel like that, do I want to say mitigates something? We're looking at the Celtics and we're all trying to wrap our heads around a loss that shouldn't have happened. And maybe it wouldn't have happened if they took care of business against Atlanta and they took care of business against Philly. And as I keep saying, the same issues persist for the Celtics from year to year. They still need to play with more heart. They still need to finish games better. But also, Miami has done a great job of slowing teams down. And as much as Boston has been willing to slow things down at the end of games, watching Miami get into their press, their 2-2-1, and play that zone and slow things down, I even saw, like, Denver, even though they went off and they got an outlier performance. Look, let's be real about what happened in game 3 here. Denver they pushed that lead out because Christian Brown, or Braun, however people want to say it, Brown had 15 points and 7 of 8 shooting, and he came in the third quarter, fourth quarter, and all of a sudden just went nuts. And he saved Denver. This random outlier performance saved Denver from a what might have been a loss. Like this will go down as a 15-point win, but this could have been a loss. That fourth quarter was looking ugly, and Brown comes in and changes the entire energy of the game. And obviously Jokic was amazing. He had 32 points, 20 rebounds, 10 assists. Murray had 34, 10, and 10. Two teammates having 30-point triple doubles. All of that stuff is amazing. But then later in the game, you heard the audio if you're watching the game, Jeff Green screaming for the bench, finish them off, finish this game, don't play with the game. The lead got down to like 9 with a couple minutes to go. Miami just does not go away. I just feel like while all of the Boston flaws are certainly there, and I'm not dismissing any of them, it is set off a little bit by they had they had Miami in spots where they could have won, and Miami continues, Boston or no Boston, to win fourth quarters and win those fourth quarters going away and putting themselves in a chance to win these games. And if it wasn't for a missed jumper late in the game, look, they got the lead down to what, 10 or so. They hit a jumper. They forced a turnover. They got the offensive foul. If they had hit that jumper, that could have changed things. And that's a jumper that fell against Boston. Maybe it's just not quite as bad as it seems. Maybe Boston's loss to Miami, while undoubtedly bad, maybe the extremes that some people are feeling, maybe it's not that far off. Maybe it's not that extreme. Maybe if things were just a little bit more normal, Boston would be playing in the finals. I mean, game 7 comes down to a sprained ankle, but if the Celtics were able to finish off some of these games, and if Gabe Vincent and Caleb Martin weren't going crazy, maybe things would have been different. And that's all I'm saying. Maybe the level of outlier performance that we continue to see from Miami, maybe it's just, hey, look, give Miami some credit here, and maybe it's just not as bad. Now, I feel like every time I'm saying this, I have to throw in the caveat that, sure, there's a lot that was bad, and that needs to be fixed. But I don't know. I look at this Miami team play now. It's like, geez, there's like destiny involved here. I don't know. Chew on that. Let me know what you think. It does take some of the edge off to me. We'll play with that. Hop in the comments and let me know. We'll talk about that in just a minute. First, let's talk about eBay. eBay Motors is for a championship team. It's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit, or your money back, because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. I want to thank you for making the Locked On Celtics podcast your first listen every day. Come back tomorrow, mailbag time, full mailbag. Like I said, in the third segment, we'll be getting mailbag questions to kick that off, getting a little jump on the mailbag, but full mailbag podcast tomorrow to wrap up the week. All right. As you can see on the rundown here on the YouTube page, on today's show, Chris Paul is in talks with Phoenix, and Phoenix is trying to figure out what they want to do with Chris Paul. They definitely want to save some money because he's due $30 million, and that's just not going to cut it, right? It's not going to cut it with current financial situation. He's not worth $30 million. He's got a partial guarantee. So they can't figure out if they can trade him, cut him, stretch him, which means they have 2 years left on his deal. You stretch him, it's double that plus one. So they take the guaranteed portion, the $15.8 million, they add it to the $30 million. So it's 45, almost $46 million. Divide that by 5. which I'm not going to do. It was at 9 million per, plus a little something extra. And that stays dead money on the books for the next 5 years. That's a possibility. You don't want to do that, especially heading into this crazy super tax thing. They're trying to figure out what to do with Chris Paul. And then, of course, people are like, whoa, Chris Paul. We like Chris Paul. We want him on our team. And that's been happening around. So can the Celtics get Chris Paul? And the short answer is, I don't think so. It is extraordinarily tough for the Celtics to get Chris Paul because you're not going to pay him $30 million. There's no way in hell, no chance, nada, nothing, zero, zip, no chance Boston is going to pay Chris Paul almost $31 million to acquire him in a trade. So that's out. There's no way to get him. You can get you're gonna package like Brogdon plus somebody else to get Chris Paul for this year and next. It's not worth it to me. So I'm already considering that possibility out. So Chris Paul at 38 years old will have to become a free agent. Do the Celtics have free agent money? Well, technically, they still have the possibility of using the taxpayer mid-level exception. However, new collective bargaining rules kick in this summer when it comes to that. If the Celtics use the taxpayer MLE, they will be hard capped at the super tax level. So the super tax level for 23-24 is $179.5 million. When you factor in all of the Celtics salary, dead money, all that other stuff, they have $11.4 million in space, cap space, before they hit that super tax apron. So can they use the taxpayer mid-level, which at this point would be somewhere in the 6 and change, something like that, $6 million or so. I forgot. I don't have the entire. What did they give Gallen? 6.8. So maybe like $7 million next year and change. That leaves them $4 million of wiggle room. Could they use it? They could. That leaves them so preciously close to that threshold that I don't know if they're going to want to do that. It's also not likely that he's going to want to come out to Boston. If he goes anywhere, it's very likely going to be one of the LA teams. But if they don't have the room for him, or maybe he doesn't like the way that's all going, Boston is an option if he's waived and is willing to take that taxpayer mid-level. Boston would very likely, at that point, you'd probably still have to make some moves. This does not account for Grant Williams. The cap figure on Grant Williams is $12.9 million. So if the taxpayer mid-level is somewhere over 7 and there's $4 million left, then Grant can't get any more than, I'd say 16, close to 17 million. His cap figure is almost 13 million. So if he got paid 16 and change, 17, they'd be cutting it extraordinarily close. Now they can cut some of that salary down by, maybe moving Peyton Pritchard for nothing. You can maybe move. You don't pick up the Mike Muscala option. That's a team option. That's $3.5 million. That gives you some wiggle room. Maybe Justin Champagnie. You can save a couple million there. by letting him go. It's a non-guaranteed deal. So there's wiggle room within there. But what that does is it leaves Boston so close to that cap where they won't be able to do much in terms of adding talent over the course of the summer. And that would be just, maybe some minimum contracts or trades or whatever. So is it possible? Yeah, but it's you're really threading the needle with Chris Paul. Now, the other thing about Chris Paul, well, first of all, if you bring him in, you're likely moving Brogdon somewhere anyway, right? You're saying we're not going to go with Malcolm, we're going to go with Chris, and he'll likely either start and play short minutes or come off the bench and close. But you run the risk of putting a lot of eggs in a very fragile basket because he has not been able to last a full season. And maybe you say, hey, look, assuming Marcus Smart stays and Derek White stays and Chris Paul gets to play like a little bit more reduced role where he's not going to be relied on to do a ton, and you can step that up a bit in the playoffs. But he's just so injury prone that it's going to be hard to count on him. And the real risk is you pay the money for him to come in, you put yourself in this precarious financial situation, and all of a sudden it doesn't work out because he's hurt at the end of the season. So it's possible. I don't like it necessarily under the current financial rules. If it was the old collective bargaining agreement, I would have been, yeah, let's just go for it. And at that point, I don't even know if there would have been you would have to figure out a different scenario. Like, are you still trading Malcolm Brogdon? I don't think the potential for a Brogdon trade would even exist if it was, under the old circumstances. Maybe you still want to bring in Chris Paul and just stack that guard rotation. Maybe you just do that and deal with it. I don't know. But under the old rules, would have no issue with that whatsoever. No issue. Figure it out. If it doesn't work, then you can move on over the course of the season. But under the current rules, the way things are going, it's going to be really, really hard because being hard capped at that super tax line is going to really limit. If something goes wrong during the course of the season and they're right at that line, and if that hinders them being able to make a move, then it's not worth it, right? If he's hurt or somebody else is hurt and you can't add to the roster, I'm not sure that that's something that the Celtics, a position they want to be in. So I'm going to say that it's very unlikely that he is a Celtic. Chances are in the single-digit percentage, and I'm going to say it's below 5%. But hey, thanks for the segment. Up next, we get into the mailbag questions. People have mailbag questions about the collective bargaining agreement and some of the stuff that I've been talking about in the first 3 days this week. First, let's talk about Birddogs. Birddogs are the very comfortable, very stylish shorts that you will love, and they are designed to, hey, look, we want to show off our legs. Let's not pretend that we don't. These are stretch khaki shorts designed to fit slimmer through the thigh, giving your leg that nice sculpted look. They do the exact same thing as Lululemon, but they fit way better. And forget that stiff restricting cotton. Birddogs invented cloud knit fabric that look just like khaki, but stretches in a way that you don't have to sacrifice movement, and it uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. You can hop in a pool, dry off because the fabric dries off quickly, run off to a date or a meeting with, or just hang out with friends. You can do it all in the same pair of shorts. Go play some golf. Go do whatever. It's very multi-functional. You can also, when you decide to buy it, go to birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA. You enter the promo code LockedOnNBA. You get a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnNBA for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you that. And you get a cool tumbler while you're at it. I want to thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Check out Locked On NBA. You want to get caught up on the NBA Finals. Maybe you didn't see what I was talking about in the first segment. Check out Locked On NBA. I host with Jake Madison on Wednesdays. That's a good time. Hope you enjoyed the show this week. If you haven't listened to it, we previewed the game, and the guys today will have the post game. Nick Angstead, Pat the designer. So check it out. It's a fun show. All right. Mailbag questions. I told people all week long, we did a 3-part collective bargaining agreement podcast, and I said, hey, shoot me your questions if you've got questions regarding this, and I'll do a full mailbag podcast. And so many questions came in that I have to start now. So let's dive into this, starting with Paolo, who says, one thing Stevens also told you is that it will affect other teams too, the collective bargaining agreement. And what he didn't say but might have alluded to is that there might be some good deals to be done in the process. There are teams that will be more hard-pressed to be sellers for the next couple of years, not because they want to tank, but to clean their books inside of the new CBA. I think the Celtics can be buyers, putting all their chips in the next couple of years. And it's a good point. It's a fair point. There are going to be other teams that are going to be in a less advantageous position. The Celtics, despite, not having all of the tools that a Golden State or the Clippers would have, are still a big market team, and they still generate a fair amount of revenue. There's money coming in. So they could still find themselves in a position where they can spend more than some of the other teams approaching a very expensive roster that aren't even close to making a deep playoff run. So there are going to be potential sellers out there for guys that you might have thought wouldn't be on the market. This is why the 2-year window that I keep talking about is especially important, because Boston now has this season, they have this upcoming season, and the following season. This season with Jaylen Brown under his current deal, the following season, year 1 of Jaylen Brown under his new Supermax contract. Those are the 2 years where they got to figure this out. Either they will figure it out, get over the hump, win a championship, maybe win 2, and then the Celtics will feel much better about, hey, let's see if we can keep this ball rolling and still not go way into the super tax, but at least keep it rolling. So if they can win, maybe you can win a third, maybe you can win, I don't know, somewhere in there, you can win another title. And if that's something that Boston feels like they can do, then great. You keep the whole thing going. But if in a couple of years, the Celtics are not close or close, but not close enough, and they say, okay, we've just got to move on. We've tried Jaylen and Jayson together this long. It's not going to work. Then maybe you go a different direction. And to Paolo's point, there are going to be other stars out there, maybe in better positions, in a more complementary position, maybe a big or somebody that can play off of Tatum a little bit more. So you can have a more kind of elite pick and roll tandem or something like that. And I'm not sure who it would be, but maybe somebody out there is going to become available, and the swap for Jaylen and that player just makes sense for both sides, and you make that deal and move on. So as much as I think it's a little bit doom and gloom for everybody, there is a potential for Boston to maybe be a buyer in that mix. Noah says, You miss the most important and punitive piece in the second apron. If you don't unfreeze your draft pick from 7 years out by being under the second apron 3 out of the next 4 years, not only is the pick frozen and can't be traded, it moves to the last pick in the first round, which is true. That means that the Celtics go all in on this team and go above the apron for 4 straight years. 7 years later, they'll be picking last for 3 straight years, no matter how bad the team is. That is true. That is a price that is going to have to be paid. The only thing that I will say in response to that is, yes, your pick will be frozen. I don't know if other picks will be frozen. And so that's going to be the caveat in all of this. Let's assume that yes, your pick is frozen, and that's going to suck if you have to move on from the Jays and your pick is supposed to be the good pick, then yeah, you're kind of stuck there. But maybe you can get picks back for Jaylen and Jayson at that point, and you can kind of recover. Now, I will also say this is part of why that super tax line does sort of act as a hard cap, because if you stay below that and you can, if you stay below that, you can keep your draft pick unfrozen. So it really is incentive to stay under that line. But yeah, it's super, super punitive. Joe says, are there off ramps in the CBA if or when the CBA goes into effect and unintended consequences become overwhelmingly unfavorable for both the players and owners? Is there an ability for all sides to restructure prior to the original expiration date? I believe there is an out 6 years in. I think we're in this for at least 6 years. There's a mutual opt-out in year 6. I think this is an 8-year deal. So there are ways out, but I don't think it's any time. It's not like it's 3 years in. What I saw was a 6-year out. Maybe that'll change. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's a 6-year out for both sides. And if it is 6, whatever it is, it's not close, right? So it's not like it's 2 years in and they're going to say, "Oh, geez, let's." And who knows? Maybe both sides can get together. If it's an utter disaster, maybe they can negotiate something. That's always possible. I've been through collective bargaining agreement negotiations. The contract is the contract, but there's always an opportunity, if it's an utter disaster, for both sides to get to the table and find a way to negotiate something, some kind of addendum, some sort of something that could maybe help temporarily fix the issue. There are ways to do that, but yeah, this is going to be the deal for a while. All right, last one here for this segment. Jake says, curious if you have any insight as to why and how this new CBA was desirable from a player standpoint. Seems to me that while the impetus was to even the playing field, encourage parity, role players and non-star free agents will face significant devaluation in the range of contracts that they're offered. Basically, what's the motivation here for the players to agree to this? Well, they did get some things in this deal. And I think one of the big ones is they got the opportunity to get an ownership stake. They have the opportunity to buy into funds that are, I think it's almost like a stock. You get to buy into the value of these franchises. And I think that ability to make money in a unique way, and there's some extra money that was thrown into the collective, the basketball related income. So the players did ultimately find ways to increase the pot as far as the money that they're getting. And they did find a creative way to buy into the value of teams without buying into a specific team. So Jaylen Brown can buy into a fund that makes money off the value of other NBA teams, but he's not actually owning those NBA teams. You know, if you play with your own 401k or other investing apps, you can go and like I can buy into through an app that I use, a Berkshire Hathaway fund or something like that, where I'm buying a product that mimics what Berkshire Hathaway is doing. And I get to I'm not buying all of the stocks they're buying. I'm not invested in Berkshire Hathaway. I'm just kind of buying into something that is similar. So it works like that. They did get some financial concessions out of this. So that seems to be some of what got them to agree to this deal. As far as the rest, I don't know. Maybe they just didn't see some of these the unintended consequences, or maybe we're misinterpreting some of these unintended consequences. For all I know, that's going to be the that's the best I can do. That's the best I can tell you. That's all I can. Oh man. Well, I hope you enjoyed this podcast as I'm trying to fiddle with my production thing. I apologize. I will get the hang of this. It does look better, and hopefully it sounds better on the audio version. So I definitely want to thank you for riding out these first couple initial bumps. I don't think it was that bad. So always onward and upward, as they say, trying to get better somehow, either aesthetically or with the product or whatever. I don't know. It's late. Tomorrow it's a mailbag podcast. So subscribe, get your questions in at johnkaralis.com/mailbag. Lots of questions. So I don't know if I can get to all of them, but I will try to group some of them together. If I don't get to it, I'm sorry. I'm going to try to, maybe answer it in a future podcast. Lots of podcasting to happen throughout this off season. So there's a lot of time for me to talk about it and get to everything. So subscribe. If you're on the YouTube channel, leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the show, about whatever I've talked about in the show. And then I would love it if you shared the podcast and you told your friends and family that they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.